All right. My name is Andy. I'm the family ministry pastor. Pastor David is on vacation today. So we're talking all this month, Pastor David's been talking about into the wild, how Moses has been taking the people of Israel out of Egypt into the wilderness and then eventually into the promised land. And so I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about vacations, road trips. How many of you guys have taken a road trip already this summer? You gone somewhere, okay? How many of you will be taking a road trip this summer? Yes, road trips. We love road trips. Now, think about this. What is the longest road trip you've ever been on? Now, Moses was a 40-year road trip. That's pretty horrible, right? What's the longest road trip you've ever been on? The longest one that I can think of is like 2 days worth of driving. It was actually longer than that. We drove, just last summer, we drove from Kansas City to Mount Rushmore in South Dakota, from Mount Rushmore to Montana, from Montana to Yellowstone National Park, from Yellowstone National Park into Wyoming, a camp in Wyoming, from Wyoming to Kansas City. That was a long trip, and it was not with my family, it was with the youth ministry. I went with Pastor Nick, and we went on a trip. Road trips, you see all kinds, especially a long road trip, and you go to places that are kind of off the beaten path, and you're on these long deserted highways and interstates. You see all kinds of amazing, interesting things, don't you? Last year on this road trip, we saw, the usual deer, and we saw some antelope, and then we saw some mountain goats. We were looking for moose. We didn't see any moose, or maybe we did. Did we see any moose? We might have. But we were looking for unusual things. But the most unusual thing that I saw was late at night. And it was in Montana. We were in Montana, and we were on our way to the Glacier National Park. We were on our way, and if you've ever been, I just was in Michigan last weekend, and I noticed this is somewhat similar there, but it really doesn't get dark until about 11 o'clock at night. And so you're just so far north that the sunset is a little bit later in the day. And so we're driving, and it's probably 10:30, 11, close to midnight, and it's just really starting to get dark. And on one side is a lake. And it's probably 100 yards away, and there's some woods, so you can't see a whole lot, but it's really just a lake there. On the other side, we're on this highway, but it's not a normal highway, because on the other side of this lake, on the road, is these homes. There's all kinds of different homes, and it was an unusual road that we were on. It was like a residential area, but it really wasn't. And so we're driving by these homes, and we're driving by, and everyone else in my van was pretty much asleep because it's late at night. I'm driving, and and I see up ahead in one of these homes a lawn. And I see something unusual in the lawn, and I'm trying to, it's late, I'm tired, I'm trying to figure out what is that? What is that? Is that an animal? Is that a deer? Okay, slow down. If it's a deer, don't want it to hit us. But it wasn't a deer. And then it flashed through my mind as we got closer. I thought, have you ever seen those placards that people put? A lot of times it's in their front yard or maybe in a garden. And it's someone that looks like it's a plywood piece, and it's painted to look like it's a woman maybe who's bending over in her garden, and her dress has come up, and there's bloomers underneath, and she's looking behind, so it's kind of like this, and I'm like, man, what is that? And then it moved. I thought, what in the world? And it was like this head popped up. It's ingrained in my memory. A head popped up, and it was a man. And it wasn't just a man, it was a man who was completely, totally, 100% naked in his yard. And all I heard at that moment was the van ahead of me in the radio was Pastor Nick was driving going, "Oh my gosh, can you believe what we just saw?" And it was just myself and him and the person next to him in his van. And my entire van woke up at that moment, and it was one of those things, had he not seen it, I don't know that I would have really known that it was real, right? It was like, is that real? I just really see that man run away completely naked. Strange. You see strange things happen on road trips, right? We were when we got to Glacier National Park, the reason we were there was to enjoy the park. And so a couple different days we went into the park to hike. In the park, has anyone ever been to Glacier National Park? It's a beautiful, beautiful place. In the park, there's this one road. It's called Road to the Sun, and it goes up this steep mountain, and it feels like you're going to head to the sun. It's so high up. It's just unbelievable, beautiful. And so one day, we went to go hike, this long hike, and so we wanted to get there early for a couple of reasons. One, the hike was going to be long, but two, we wanted to get a good parking place. And we, just as it is, you got 30 teenagers, and we were there late, and so we didn't get quite to the park quite on time. So we got there a little bit late, so we had to kind of split up all the different places where we were parking. So as we were done with the hike, and a long hike, sometimes it takes a while, so some of the group was a little bit slower to get back. So there was another leader and myself, and we thought, hey, we have the vans here. Let's take one of the vans and get the other van. That's a few miles down the road. We'll bring it back, and when everyone's back, we'll be able to pile everyone in and take off. Now, I'm going to show you a picture right here behind me of what that road, that mountain road, looked like. And if you've ever been in Estes Park or Glacier National Park or one of those big mountainous parks, you see that there's the road, right? And it's a really narrow road because they really didn't build it for large vehicles to go up and down. Now, we were driving 15-passenger vans, and I was not driving the van as we were going up to get the other ones. I was in the passenger seat, and she was driving, and she was, in general, nervous about driving a 15-passenger van. And as you can see, that road is narrow, and one side is a mountain side that if you don't want to go too far to your right, because you'll run into that mountain if you're on that side, or on the other side is a massive, long, deep cliff that you'll go over. Now, there is a little guardrail thing there, but, it was pretty small. And so you're always driving, and as you're driving straight, you always feel like there's other cars going to come that are going to hit you, right? So you're always kind of going off to the right just a little bit. And she was on the side, we were on the side where we would go off that cliff, and she was nervous and driving, and I didn't really realize how nervous she was. And we're driving up this road, and this car starts coming, and she gets over to the right, it's cronk! And there's a little step on the side of the van, and that little step, she ran into that guardrail. And one of the things several things went through my mind at that point, but one of the things was, oh my gosh, who put that guardrail there? And then the other thought was, oh my gosh, thank God that guardrail was there. Guardrails, right? We saw that video about rules. Rules are guardrails for our life. Rules are guardrails for our life. And so we've been, as adults, you've been talking about into the wild, how Moses has led the people out of Egypt into the wilderness, and all the different things that happened to the Israelite people, to Moses in that wilderness experience. And last week, you learned about the golden calf and how the Israelites built this golden calf just probably weeks or months after they had left Egypt, because they felt like Moses had gone to the top of the mountain and he wasn't going to come back, and so we're going to build this idol to worship. Interestingly enough, the reason that Moses was on top of the mountain was he was receiving the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments, and as he's on top of the mountain, imagine this, all the people are basically breaking all of those commandments as he's getting the commandments from God. And so what we're going to do just for a moment, this is a little bit long, so I ask you to bear with me. In Exodus chapter 20, verse 2, we're going to read through these 10 commandments. All right? So this is what God told Moses when Moses was on that mountain, as the people were building this gold calf. It says, I am the Lord your God who rescued you from the land of Egypt, the place of your slavery. Rule number 1, commandment number 1, you must not have any other God but me. Number 2, you must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea. You must not bow down to them or worship them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God who will not tolerate your affection for any other God. So I'm going to skip down to the third one. It says, you must not misuse the name of the Lord your God. The Lord will not let you go unpunished if you misuse his name. Number 4, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Number 5, honor your father and mother, then you will have a long life, full life in the land of your Lord your God is giving you. Number 6, you must not murder. You must not commit adultery. You must not steal. You must not testify falsely against your neighbor. Number 10, you must not covet your neighbor's house. You must not covet your neighbor's wife, male or female servant, ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. Guardrails. Moses was given some guardrails. So what are guardrails? Guardrails prevent us from destruction. I don't know if you've ever driven down a long body of water. When you're in Tampa, I've driven this road one time in Tampa. I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's this long, huge bridge that covers miles, and you're basically going from one body of land to another, and in between this bay area in Tampa. And it's miles and miles, and obviously there's a guardrail on one side, but thankfully there's not just a guardrail on one side, you have a guardrail on the other side as well, right? There's 2 guardrails. Now I have something else back here that I want to show you guys, and it's not about driving or guardrails, but it's about bowling. Anyone here bowl? That would be Pastor Nick. I'm not a bowler. Pastor Nick is. Pastor Nick let me use his bowling ball. Pastor Nick is so much of a bowler that he has his own bowling shoes. You probably didn't know this about him. I didn't know this about him until just the other day. And he also let me borrow his bowling ball. Now, this bowling ball, it looks like it's been well used. It's been well used, hasn't it? Pastor Nick's actually a pretty good bowler. You may not know about him either. He, one point in his life, was bowling almost every week. It was 99-cent night at the bowling alley, and he would go with his friend Marcus, and they would bowl and bowl and bowl and bowl for hours at a time. He got to the point where one time he had a 244. Is that right? 244. Almost 300 is the best you can do in bowling, so he got close to the best you can do. That's probably a good 150 points better than what I normally would get when I bowl. So bowling, as I said, I'm not a great bowler. I do go bowling on occasion, and sometimes I wish I had the bumpers. Anyone here ever use the bumpers or know about the bumpers, right? What are the bumpers? The bumpers are those things that keep the ball from going into the gutter so that you can get some points, right? Allows you to get points. Bowling, bumpers prevent us from the worst possible score. And, of course, you don't want just one bumper, right? If you have one bumper, that's not going to do you any good because it's going to hit the bumper and then go to the other side and go into the gutter. So you want both bumpers up, right? You want both of those bumpers. Well, the same is true for rules or commandments. We want both of those up. We want 2 sides up. Commandments are rules that prevent us from hurting God, others, or ourselves. And it may look like that God gave us 10 commandments, but the truth is, God really gave us just 2. He gave Moses 2 commandments. I want you to look at this. The first commandment that he gave was, don't have another God. The second one was, don't make an idol that you're going to worship. The third one was, don't misuse God's name. And the fourth one was, honor God by keeping the Sabbath, the 7th day, holy. Those are really 4 laws, 4 commandments about love God. So you have one guardrail that's love God. Then the next 6 is honor your father and mother. Don't murder anyone. Don't cheat on your husband or your wife. Don't steal from someone. Don't lie about someone. Don't wish you had other people's stuff. It's all about loving people, right? So on one side, you have a guardrail or a bumper that says, love God. And the other side, you have a guardrail or a bumper that says, love people. And those bumpers, those guardrails, help us to make sure that we don't hurt God, we don't hurt someone else, or we don't hurt ourselves. Guardrails, bumpers. Do you have the guardrails or the bumpers up in your life? Jesus basically said the same thing. At one point, He's toward the end of his life. He's in Jerusalem. He's being questioned by the religious leaders of the time, and they're trying to trick him, to trap him. And they ask him a question, and this is what they say. What happens in Matthew 22. It says, "But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees with his reply," this earlier argument that they had, "they met together to question him again. One of them, an expert in religious law, tried to trap him with this question: 'Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses?' Jesus replied, 'You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind.'" Guardrail bumper number 1. "The second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. The entire law and all the demands of the prophets are based on these 2 commandments. So love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love people as yourself." How do we keep from hurting God, hurting others, hurting ourselves? We love God and we love people. We have our guardrails, our bumpers up. Are your bumpers, are your guardrails up? Let me end by saying this. Those are great principles, and they're principles that are true no matter who you are. But the principle really truly works when we have relationship with God. It's not just following rules. It's not just loving God and loving people. It's having relationship with that God. And that relationship only comes through Jesus, through recognizing and admitting that we ourselves, myself, yourself, saying to yourself, "I am a sinner. I'm made mistakes. I'm imperfect. I need Jesus to come and to rescue me." And when he does that, I am fully capable and able to have relationship with God so that then I can love him and love people. It begins there. So if you wouldn't mind bowing your heads and closing your eyes, I just want to pray with you, and then I want to give you the opportunity to make that decision yourself this morning. Lord, I thank you that you've given us rules so that we can live, so that we don't hurt you, we don't hurt ourselves, and we don't hurt others. And they're simple rules. Not easy, but simple. Love you, love others, love people. God, I pray that you would help us. That is a hard task. Easy to say, hard to do. Would you help us? Now, if you're here and you say, "You know what? I don't really have a relationship with God. I don't really have a relationship with Jesus." I want to give you that opportunity right now. Just want you to raise your hand and say, "You know what? I need Jesus. I need to have a relationship with God." Go ahead and just, if that's you, raise your hand. See that hand? See that hand there? Yep. See that hand? Anyone else? I need Jesus. Well, I just shared it. What that means is simple. It's admitting 2 things. It's admitting that you were sinners. And 2, it's admitting, believing that Jesus did in fact die and rise again for us, to forgive us from those sins. So, church, would we together pray this prayer out loud? We're just going to pray those 2 things. Repeat after me. Say, "Dear Jesus, I believe that I'm a sinner. I've made mistakes. I've done things wrong. I also believe that you died and you rose again so that my sins could be forgiven and I could have life in you. Jesus, I want relationship with you. Would you come into my life and change me? In your name, amen." Would you all stand with me, please? if you prayed that prayer, whether that's the first time, whether you raised your hand or didn't raise your hand, if you prayed that prayer and it meant something different, something new, something unique to you, would you do me a favor and do one of two things? Just in a moment, there are going to be some people right there by those banners that say prayer. You can walk over there and they would love to connect with you more, explain maybe what you've done if you're not sure. They would love to pray with you. The second thing you can do is you can talk to me. I'd love to connect with you if you've prayed that prayer and that means something new, something different to you in your life. If you also need prayer, if you need prayer there for maybe finances, health issues, relationship issues, other things that you might be going through, crisis, maybe you just want to praise a praise, like, man, God did something awesome in my life. They would love to connect with you. These people that are on their way over right now, they would love to pray and connect with you this morning. I want to remind you of one thing before I bless you this morning. I want to remind you that next Sunday is going to be a fun, different, unique service. We're going to be meeting together with our network churches. That's Parkway and Bridgeway and Park City Church. They will be here at this church at CrossPoints. We're going to have a combined service. It's going to be one service at 10 a.m. If you come at 9 a.m., you're going to be here early and you can hang out. If you're here at 11 a.m., you're going to be catching the very end of service. We're just having one service, 10 a.m. We're going to have a special kids service, Toy Story Sunday. So we'd love for you to be here to be a part of that if you're a kid. And if you're an adult, we're going to have an awesome, fun service in here. Right after that service at basically 11:30, we will we will have a picnic right up there on the hill. We're going to have some water games. We're going to have some water slides, slip and slides, Shawnee's longest slip and slide. So come be a part of that. Now, if you wouldn't mind, I would like to bless you. Just raise your hands. I want to bless you. In the name of Jesus, I bless my brothers and I bless my sisters to love you, God, and to love other people well. I pray that their guardrails would be up, that you would keep them from hurting you, from hurting other people, from hurting themselves. Bless them to walk out of this place with the power and the strength to follow your rules. I pray this in your name, and everyone said, amen. Amen. Go in peace.